Hello there, I'm Black Bright News, and the asylum seekers are dominating the headlines again. I'm not quite sure why. Isn't anything else happening in the world? But anyway, that's the case. Metro, asylum, it's barracks to square one. So what are they planning to do now? They're planning to take the asylum seekers out of hotels and put them into barracks, army barracks or ex-army barracks. And this is the plan. So what does it say here? A year after saying ex-army sites must go, New Starmer bid to end hostile protests. So they're claiming that this is because people are protesting about them staying in hotels. And I think the word hotel has changed quite a lot. The hotels that the hotels that I used to know used to be a luxury. They used to be a place where you can go and spend the time if you were going to different towns, and it was a luxury. Even the Premier Inns were a luxury. Now, they're no longer a luxury, because now you'll go into many hotels and you'll find, I don't know if they're asylum seekers or homeless, but they're occupying a percentage of the hotel. So it's no longer a luxury experience when you come down for breakfast and you find a lot of people who you know are non-paying in the breakfast area, sharing the food between them and their children. So, but the fact that they're staying in hotels is still causing a problem. So let me just read on. Labour plans to move thousands of asylum seekers out of hostels and into former military barracks. I don't even know what that looks like. A year after Keir Starmer's government said it would close two set up by the Conservatives. The move, due to be revealed imminently by the new Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, comes with the government under increasing pressure from Reform UK. And after the Prime Minister's shock reshuffle on Friday when Deputy PM Angela Rayner quit over unpaid tax. See, you can't make it up, can you? Defence Secretary John Healey confirmed his department is looking at potential use of military and non-military use of sites for temporary accommodation for people who come across on small boats that may not have a right to be here or need to be processed rapidly. And you know that once you go in those barracks, just like those people who are being detained pending deportation and they've been in there for sometimes over a year, the same thing is going to happen. It's going to end up being their home. They get forgotten. Just my thoughts. Just my opinion, because if they've got people that they have not been unable to deport, who have been in detention centres, going through all kind of mental stresses because they don't know when they're going to leave or when they're going to be deported, it's worse than prison. At least with prison, you get a prison sentence and you know you're going to be in prison for 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, 2 years, 5 years for life. You know that. So you can psychologically plan that. But when you're in a deportation centre or a detention centre, as they call it, you don't know when you're going to be called up to be deported. That must be awful. But anyway, people will say it's meant to be awful. It's not meant to be a great experience. But remember, the government makes mistakes, and not everybody who they put in these places are guilty of a crime. So, what have we got here? He and former Home Secretary Yvette Cooper had used military planners for the project, he told Sky News. Those are decisions we haven't taken yet, but it's work we're doing at the moment. And we're doing it jointly with the Home Office. I'm looking really hard at it. He insisted, I recognise that the loss of confidence of the public over recent years in Britain's ability to control its borders needs to be satisfied. Yeah, it does need to be satisfied, because what are you doing? You spent 230 million on that Rwanda scheme. That's where the asylum seekers were supposed to go. But they hadn't done their homework, had they? Forking out all this money, making contracts that they still have to abide by, and they hadn't done their homework. It wasn't that easy as they thought. So they've already wasted 230 million of taxpayers' money, our money that we're working for, to set up a Rwanda scheme under the guise that, everybody's going to Rwanda. And what happened? Not only the 230 million, but 87 million was spent on, what was it spent on? On IT systems. And another 2.3 million on top of that was spent on legal fees for the Migration and Economic Development Partnership. So why didn't they think about the barracks back then, instead of wasting all that money? And then they'll blame it on the immigrants. Yes, blame it on the immigrants because you're spending all this money on immigrants when you could be investing it more wisely. It's so infuriating because, and it's a bit like when you work in a organisation. The people at the bottom always know what's going on. They're the people who should be advising the people at the top who don't know what's going on. But that doesn't happen. The administrators are looked on as skivvies. And similarly, when you're dealing with situations like this, like the Rwanda scheme, if they had been consulting people who were so-called at the bottom of the hierarchy, maybe they wouldn't be making so many mistakes at our expense. But no point moaning up once the horse is bolted. No point closing the gate once the horse is bolted. And this is a situation that is ongoing. It's ongoing. And they still don't have a clue, and they'll still kind of plaster it all over the newspapers and on our screens to make us feel that the asylum seekers are the criminals. They don't say that, look, we've signed up a convention in 1950, whenever it was, and we're obliged to accept these asylum seekers because we, the UK government, signed up and agreed to accept them. Now it's got out of hand. Now they want to renege on that contract, but they can't. So what do? They try to make it more and more uncomfortable for the asylum seekers. It's a bit like when they came out with that hostile policy for black people or for foreigners or for immigrants, to make it difficult and more inconvenient and intolerable for black people to live here. Once again, it didn't work because they didn't do their homework. They didn't understand that there's a statute of limitations, there's certain legal premises in place and policies, and you just cannot do what you like. And I don't know what kind of legal teams they're using, but they're not giving them the correct information. Otherwise, all of these asylum seekers, as soon as they arrive on boats, they would be transported to Rwanda, no questions asked. You've paid into that scheme. Use it. But just like the houses that they bought for the HS2, they pay all this money, they buy out people, and then all the houses are abandoned. Because the project is scrapped. Why? Once again, probably because they didn't do their homework. This is just my opinion. Remember, it's not fact. And I'm just giving my thoughts because I get frustrated every morning when I come in and I see asylum seekers on the front page. Anyway, your views would be appreciated. And that's all for now.